All right, guys, what's going on? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be talking about the end of XDefiant, and more likely, what is most likely to cause the end of XDefiant. Now, I have to. I'm going to try to put somewhat of an analogy on this to make this a little bit more interesting. So here it is. Everything we've been feeling with XDefiant right now in terms of its problems, in terms of its issues and everything else, is pretty much like a symptom, right? A symptom of this disease that could kill this game, so to speak, right? And in order to truly get rid of the disease, not the symptom, right? Get rid of the disease itself, you basically need to get rid of the underlying cause. You need to go to the source, right? In order to truly get rid of it. Now, I'm pretty sure that this is how the developers are actually solving these problems in terms of, all the bug fixes and everything like that. You got to eventually get to the source, right? You don't just, it's not like you're just getting, the symptoms done or whatnot. You got to get the source. So anyway, so the problem is this. The devs alone cannot get rid of the disease because it's part of a two-way process. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's the fact that the game itself needs to get rid of these bugs, which is something that the developers are responsible for. And at the same time, the game itself needs to be played, which is something that we're responsible for. So what am I getting at here? Well, ultimately, the truth is this: no matter what the devs do, no matter how hard they try, no matter how many problems they manage to resolve, it all means nothing if there's not enough players to support the game and to play the game. Simple as that. So what I'm trying to tell you is, ultimately, what is the thing as of right now, that what I can see, the biggest thing that could kill XDefiant at this point right now is the community's lack of patience to wait for the devs, or should I say, to give the devs enough time in order to fix these issues, add a bunch of features in, etc., etc., etc. And that is the reality of things today. Now, when it comes to patience, there's like two scenarios. And the scenario is you either have patience or you don't. And if you have patience, how much of it do you have? Because it really just depends on what we're talking about here. And in previous videos, I've mentioned that if there's a specific thing, right, or a specific symptom, right, so to speak, quote unquote symptom, right, of the game, right, of something that's wrong with the game, that is like a trigger point for a person, they won't even touch the game, or they'll uninstall it right away. Whether it's how the way the snipers are, the way the movement is, the netcode issues, things like that. Like, no matter what the issue is that they just simply put cannot stand, right, or don't have much of a patience for, if not at all, sooner or later they're going to put the game down, right? But here's the interesting thing, though. I've said time and time again on this channel, up until further notice, up until I have a reason to not give the devs the benefit of the doubt, that I am more than willing to be patient. I mean, with what we're getting now, I am enjoying, right? Granted, there's a lot of work to be done. There's no doubt about it. And I'm pretty sure that in the future, I'm going to enjoy it even more. And the interesting thing about XDefiant is that it is a game that is going to be supported throughout time, and hopefully the game lasts long enough to where it can go for years. That is ultimately the goal, right? Because it's the same game. It's not just a game that's going to be supported for a short period of time, and then after that, it's going to be gone. Unless it dies down so much to where Ubisoft tells the devs, nope, stop supporting the game. We're going to abort. We're going to abandon the mission, and we're going to do something else because we're losing money and time by supporting a game that is dead or something like that, right? So as you can see, it is a two-step process in terms of getting this game to where it needs to be. And we are part of that. We are part of that, actually, believe it or not. Without us, the developers cannot get to where they need to go, and without the developers, the game will simply not get to where it needs to go. So therefore, you got to have both. You got to have both. So it's kind of like having confidence and skill. When it comes to like, let's say for instance you're a fighter, you got to have both the confidence and the skill. You know what I mean? So uh, at this point right now, and every single person is different, and every single person has their own points, and you guys have been very, very gracious in the comment section to tell me, the issues that you personally have with this game. In the previous video, which you guys have been very supportive of, by the way, thank you so much. You've told me, more than one problem. Like, for instance, I said, the main problem with the game is such and such. You guys, on the other hand, have been listing multiple problems in terms of the things that, you believe are equally as important, and they don't just come in, one flavor, so to speak, right? There are multiple flavors of all these different problems that this game has that are a big deal to you. And these are things that will get you playing the game less or not at all. And there are things that are aggravating you, and which makes sense, right? Nobody really wants to play a game that basically aggravates them, right? Or annoys them, right? So obviously part of the enjoyment of a game that has a lot of problems is to try not to take it seriously. I mean, that's me. I seriously, I mean, perhaps it's my age, perhaps it's the generation that I grew up in. I don't know, but there's lots of you that are around my age too that are on this channel, according to my analytics. In 2 months I'll be 40, and I've learned the hard way, by the way, to not take multiplayer games seriously anymore. You can have a passion for them, but you don't have to take them seriously, especially if they are a true blue casual game, in which, in this particular case, XDefiant definitely is. And even though I've come to accept the problems that the game has right now, obviously it's not something that I believe that should be in the game in the long run in terms of all these problems. However, because of the time that I'm willing to give the devs, because I understand, even though I'm not a dev at all by any stretch of the imagination, I'm more than willing to give the devs the benefit of the doubt and to give them the time that they need in order for this game to get to where it needs to go and to reach and hopefully reach its full potential, is because I like enough of what I'm playing right now to the point to where it's like, yeah, this will keep me on ice. This is enough for me to keep me going up until these things get fixed. And I also visualize as not just as a content creator, but as a player, as just a regular person, right? Even if I wasn't doing this, I would still be thinking of this game the same way. And what I mean is, like, I visualize this game in terms of where it could possibly be in a year from now and then beyond that. And one of the things that has always kept me very appealed to XDefiant, so to speak, is not just because of the lack of SBMM/EOMM, but it's also because of the fact that when the devs communicate to us, it's not just the way that they communicate, but like they're very frequent about it, and they understand and they know and actually are very open about all these issues, to whereas so many other devs, they kind of do the opposite. They pretend like it's perfect or whatever, or they're not very humble, and they do know more about the game from a development standpoint than the players do. But at the same time, there are players out there, like, let's say, for instance, professional players in another game, like, let's say, Halo, right? I think you can't argue that there's no other no type of player out there that knows the game quite like the pros do, right? Just to give you an example. And yet even those guys get ignored. However, here with XDefiant, we've got the most casual of the casual players, as well as the top 1% players, like pros or future pros that are going to be playing this game, or former Call of Duty pros, that will express, certain problems that the game has or whatever issue that they're having. And we know for sure that the developers are listening. And they've also shown that they respond to all sorts of people a hell of a lot more than some other developers do, or should I say the vast majority of other developers do, and frequently. And I also understand that even though they can't respond to everybody, despite the fact that obviously the same kind of problems and questions and concerns are being brought up because of this list of problems that the game has that we all have been talking about for so long now. They have to actually get to work as well. So, and these are things that take time. And some of you guys might say, or should I say, a decent amount of you might say, how much longer we have to wait? Some of the problems that this game has, it's been having for months now, ever since the game has been released, literally. And I understand that, but I'm also a person that, and I'm sure we can all relate to this, especially if we're around the same age when it comes to life itself. We know that there are certain problems that take a longer time to iron out than others. It's not just limited to video games and stuff like that, but some problems cannot be solved overnight. This is literally a fact, and unfortunately, it is something that can be aggravating. This is another reason why a lot of people fail at very hard things, because all these very hard things take time, like losing weight, for instance. Like I mentioned in a previous video, you got to be on a calorie deficit, right? And it takes 35 calories of a deficit overall in order for you to lose 1 pound legitimately. So 1 pound of fat, so ultimately you have to be consistent and you have to give it time. You're not going to turn into, you're not going to get ripped in overnight. You're not going to get ripped in a week, stuff like that. It doesn't work that way. It's something that takes a lot of work, a lot of consistency and time. And with enough time, enough work, and enough consistency, you will get there. And it's the same thing with XDefiant, really. And as of right now, the XDefiant community, a lot of the community members simply don't have patience. And I think we can all understand this to a certain degree, even for those of us that do have patience, because we've all been in a certain point in time in our lives where we just don't have patience for shit, right? Depending on what that is, we just don't. And certain things we just don't have patience, period. So therefore, we stay away from that thing that we have a lack of patience for, right? But the cool thing about XDefiant is that because it's a free-to-play title, and because it's a game that will get supported hopefully for years to come, fingers crossed, it could have a resurgency as well as a new batch of players that come in on a regular basis, especially since the franchise itself, or the game itself, is not fully established, so to speak, as far as its own identity is concerned. And that's another problem the game has. The game feels like it has no identity to a lot of people, which is kind of understandable. But I think that's also something that could actually be a gift, because if it's utilized properly, it's pretty cool, when it's unique, to where it's like, how do you identify this game? How do you explain this game? You know what I mean? And the answer isn't so cut and dry. It's not so black and white. So that in a way can make XDefiant unique if it plays its cards right. But with that being said, you give the developers the time that they need, and in 6 months from now, a year from now, I have faith that this game will be in a better place than what it is now. And because it's only one game that is going to be supported over time, and of course the fact that it's free to play and all these other things, and as well as the transparency and the passion of the devs, and the fact that the devs know what they're doing, and the fact that you actually have real people making your game and talking to you, thought I'd add that one in because as of recent news. So there are reasons as to why this game deserves its shot, but at the same time, it really depends on who you are as a person and your tolerance level, because for you, the current state of XDefiant isn't enough to keep you playing, which is understandable. So my advice is, if you're one of these people, put the game down, don't play it, and come back to it at some other point in time. And I would say even for XDefiant itself, that would be the best way to go, because if you force yourself to do something like, something that's supposed to be giving you joy and entertainment, right? And the ultimate escape, like a video game like this is supposed to do. And if it's doing the opposite when you play it because it's aggravating you, put it down. Put it down, play something else, come back in a few months or whatever, and you might find yourself enjoying the game that much more. Because there is a possibility that people that have left the game will come back later on down the road to where this game will be in a much better state. And then at the same time gain new followers and a new audience as well. Because right now there's also a lot of Call of Duty refugees that are playing this game. And even though there's a ton of familiarity with this in Call of Duty, XDefiant is still its own game. And that's something that we can't really forget. Despite the fact that it's got all these issues and an identity crisis of some kind, it's still its own game. So let's treat it as such. So anyway, with that being said, guys, I want to know, have you already lost your patience with this game? Are you playing it a lot less so that way you don't go nuts driving yourself crazy with the issues that this game has? Has the game gotten boring for you because it's lacking something that you want to be there, whatever it is? I want to know down in the comment section below. And of course, do you think that you would come back to the game, later on, for whatever reason, to give the game another shot when it reaches that other, when it reaches its full potential, at least once you get to a certain point? I want to know down in the comments section below. And as always, I like to thank everybody for taking the time to watch and or listen, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.